Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another edition of Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today is Guardians Day. Today, we're going over Marvel Studios' Guardians of the Galaxy films, and this is in commemoration of the release of the latest Guardians of the Galaxy film, Volume 3, which is dropping today at the time of this release, May the 5th. This is a film that I'm highly anticipating, but I'm not, if that makes any sense. I'm excited because I'm a fan of this franchise. I'm a fan of everyone who is in front of the camera, as well as behind the camera, with the director of all the previous Guardians of the Galaxy films, James Gunn. And it was announced that this will be the last go around, the last time we will see this particular team. And is not the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy per se, but it is the last time we're going to see Gamora, Star Lord, Drax, Groot, Rocket, Nebula, all of them together. And I want to see how this all concludes. This trilogy, if you will. Not so much a trilogy, I'll say a trilogy point five. Uh if you count the holiday special. But the reason I'm not super excited for it, phase 4 and coming into phase 5 has not been knocking it out the park for me with Marvel. I have been uh, let down. This particular phase has been underwhelming, man. I mean, going back to Black Widow, uh, you know, where it all started, where phase 4 started, it has been not too exciting. I can only count maybe two good movies that I actually enjoyed in phase 4, not counting the television shows where I liked a few of those. Actually, I like the vast majority of the Disney Plus Marvel shows, but the films, they've been struggling. I think the only one that I can just say I can stand on a hill and scream from the mountaintop, this was awesome, was Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I enjoyed that movie to from beginning to end. I really did. Not a perfect film. It got kind of messy in the end, in that third act, that it just got a little messy. But the film overall, I enjoyed. Uh Thor, Love and Thunder, a big letdown. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, it wasn't so much of a letdown. It just it was advertised to be more than what it was. I thought there was going to be more to the multiverse in that film, and it really wasn't. It was it was a decent movie. Um, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, uh, enjoyable film. I did like it, but my God, man, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. And his presence was sorely missed in that film, and it was so much of a memorial to Chadwick Boseman, which I understand, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, let's let's move the story along. Um, in the MCU, uh, it was just too much. It didn't really do it for me. Um, Now, going into the Disney Plus TV shows, I I enjoyed the vast majority of them. WandaVision was awesome. Loki was awesome. Miss Marvel was awesome. I liked Hawkeye. Uh, that's about it. All the other ones were all right. Um, did not like She-Hulk, and I wanted to like She-Hulk. Well, I'm not okay. Let me take that back. I liked it. I didn't love it, and I wanted to love it, and that's the best way to describe phase 4 into phase 5. We kicked off phase 5 with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Same thing. I wanted to love it, but I end up just liking it. Uh, I know that right now his name is Persona del Grata, but uh, Jonathan Majors was the best part of that movie. And it seems like going forward, we're not going to get any more Jonathan Majors, due to personal issues, to put it kindly. So I did not like that as much as I wanted to. So this leads us into the next film in phase 5 of Marvel, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And it's the culmination of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. Like I said before, this is the final go around with this crew. This is the final go around with James Gunn, because in case you don't know, James Gunn is moving on from Marvel after this because he is the head of DC. DC Films to be exact, and uh he's already preparing his Superman film that he has written. He is going to direct, and they are currently in pre-production for that film. They're about to start casting um uh Superman. Excited to see who Superman is going to be. I'm excited to see James Gunn's take on Superman and where we're going from there. But before we get there, let's stick with Marvel and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Today we're going to go over the history of Guardians of the Galaxy. Then we're going to get into some reviews. Of course, we're going to review all of the Guardians of the Galaxy films with the exception of Volume 3, which drops today. You can look for that review this weekend after I've watched it. So let's go over the history of Guardians of the Galaxy. Going back to the pages of Marvel Comics, Guardians of the Galaxy is a superhero team appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. The Guardians' first issue in Marvel Superheroes number 18 in January of 1969. The initial roster concluded Vince Astro, uh, Tainaga, Captain Charlie 27, and Yandu. One of the creators of Guardians of the Galaxy, recounted, Roy Thomas, I'm sorry, recounted Guardians of the Galaxy started out as an idea of mine about super gorillas fighting against Russians and Red Chinese who were taken over and divided the USA. I got a sort of general approval out of then editor in chief, the great Stan Lee, I think, and gave the idea to Arnold Drake. Since I had not time to write and research it, Arnold went in for a conference with Stan, and Stan decided to change it to an interplanetary situation. All of the characters and situation and Guardians were created by Arnold and Stan. The team first appeared in a partially reprinted titled Marvel Superheroes in issue 18 in January of 1969, written by Arnold Drake and penned by Gene Colan. Despite strong sales of that issue, the Guardians of the Galaxy did not appear again for over 5 years in Marvel 2 and 1 number 5 in June of 1974. The story's writer, Steve Gilbert, liked the team enough to use them again in Giant Size Defenders number 5 and the Defenders number 26 through 29 in July through November of 1975. In each case, other heroes such as Captain America, the Thing, and the Defenders aided them in their war against the alien Badum. The Guardians were finally given their own series in the existing title Marvel Presents, starting with issue number 3 in February of 1976. Steve Gilbert still handling the writing reflect. Most of the story I was scripting were set in the present. I wanted to do something about combining the standard superhero elements with something a little different so that I can give my imagination a bit more play. We had redesigned the costumes, we created a new starship for them to pilot, and we revisited the premise of the comic strip so that they were no longer fighting the Bethune on Earth and sent them amongst the stars. Gilbert later left the series after 7 issues, and Roger Stein took over with Marvel Presents number 10. The series was canceled shortly afterwards due to poor sales, with the final issue being number 12 in August of 1977. The team then made guest appearances in Thor Annual number 6, The Avengers number 167 through 177, and number 181 in March of 1979. That's a good month. Miss Marvel number 23, Marvel Team Ups number 86, and many other appearances throughout the late 70s and early 1980. After this, the Guardians of the Galaxy were absent from public stories for over a decade. In 1989, Marvel editor-in-chief Tom DeFranco revived the Guardians of the Galaxy in order to cash in on his popularity on the TV series Star Trek The Next Generation. DeFranco worked out a serious concept using a new team of Guardians, but when he saw the series proposal for the original team that writer Jim Valentino had been working on at that same time, he greenlit Valentino's idea instead. The Guardian's first self-titled comic launched in June of 1990 and ran for 62 issues. The series was initially written and illustrated by Valentino, who deliberately gave it an action-oriented fun feel that stood out from your typical grim and gritty comics of the 1990s. Though Valentino had plotted the series ahead as far as issue number 50, his run was cut short when he co-founded Image Comics. Having taken on 2 new series and foundation of the publication company, Valentino asked editor Craig Anderson if he could switch to just write Guardians of the Galaxy, and in response, Anderson dismissed him from the series. With issue number 29, which came out in October of 1992, Michael Gallagher commissioned the title and continued until its cancellation with issues number 62 that came out in July of 1995. According to Kevin West, who became the penciler with issue number 30 in November of 1992, he and Gallagher worked together closely on the series, employing the Marvel method of creation, and became good friends. A spin-off 4-issue miniseries, Galactic Guardians, which came out in July through October of 1994, also by Gallagher and West, appeared during this time. West explained why he did not draw the final issue of Guardians of the Galaxy. When I heard we were getting the hook, I naturally started looking for a new job. I ended up at Malibu Comics. There was a holdup getting the Guardians plot finished, so by the time I got it, I had to pass because I had a Malibu deadline to meet. Despite any minor qualms I've had, I really did enjoy working on the series. A second volume was published in May of 2008, written by Dan Arnett and Annie Landon. The title, set in a different timeline, features a new team drawn from participants in the Annihilation Conquest storyline. The 1969 team made guest appearances in issue number 12 through 17 and in issue number 25. The new ongoing series starring the original Guardians, titled Guardians 3000, is written by Abnett, launched in 2014. Guardians of the Galaxy is a comic. Me being a comic fanatic. In case you don't know, I grew up uh, reading comics. Not my whole childhood. I got into comics. I want to say I was about 9 or 10, and I guess that's the normal time when you start reading. I don't know, but that's when I started reading comics, and I was more into mainstream comics. The main characters. My first comic book I ever read was Captain America. That was the first issue I ever picked up because my brother had it, and he had him. He had a couple of comic books in there, and I would read his issues. And it was Captain America was the first one I ever picked up. Later on, I got into Spider-Man, started reading X-Men, and so on and so forth. And then DC came along. Actually, I didn't get into DC till after Batman. Batman, that Michael Keaton's Batman, that came out in 1989, and I started reading Batman. I became a fan of his after the movie. I can honestly say the movie is the reason I got into Batman. And I started reading his comics, and I was hooked ever since. And I got into DC a lot. I got into the Flash. I got into Superman because everybody know about Superman, but I really didn't read a comic till it was early '90s, and by then they had killed him. I want to see when was the death of Superman? What, 94, 95, somewhere around in there. But anywho's, I started reading DC more frequently. But as far as Marvel is concerned, it was Avengers, it was X-Men, it was Spider-Man, it was all those characters. Fantastic Four. I never even heard of Guardians of the Galaxy. I never heard of them. Maybe every now and then they'll be in a crossover. Like I read a few issues that they've guest starred in, but I never really paid attention to Guardians of the Galaxy until 2014, and that's when I started paying attention. Well, 2013, because that's when the film was announced. The first film didn't come out till 2014, but when they announced the film, I was like, okay, what is that? what what is this? Because you have to remember, at this time, Marvel is still getting its footing. We're only about 5 or 6 years into the MCU. We started out with Iron Man, then we went into Thor, then we went into Captain America and uh, the Incredible Hulk, and all that there, and it was shaping up to be something interesting. These are characters I knew, characters I read in the comics that a lot of the mainstream audience, whether you're a comic book fan or not, you know who those characters were, and that's why those films were so successful around this time. I think that you had 9 films up to this point, and it's like, okay, where are we heading here? What's next for the MCU? What's next for Marvel Studios? Because they're knocking it out the park. And they announced Guardians of the Galaxy. And you're like, what? What is that? What is that? And a lot of my friends who are into comic books, they didn't know because I would ask them. I'm like, look, I don't. You can ask me anything about the Flash, and I could tell you. You can ask me anything about Batman, I could tell you. I'm a walking thesaurus for certain comic book characters. Um, I can't tell you one thing about Guardians, not one, because I never knew anything about them. I didn't know their backstory. I knew at one point Iron Man was a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It may be for like an issue or two, but I remember that sticking out in my head for some strange reason. But regardless, so I felt like Marvel, just sticking with the Marvel studio side of it, Kevin Feige, they're taking a chance here because, like I said, you have 9 films up to this point that have been knocking it out the park. Let me give you the list, the proper order of the MCU where it all started. It started in 2008 with Iron Man. That was the first risk taken because Marvel Studios at this point it didn't exist. So they took up a loan to make this film, to produce this film. and it was all riding on Iron Man. And Iron Man knocked it out the park. It was beautiful. Then that same year, you have the Incredible Hulk, not with Mark Ruffalo, with Edward Norton, and it was great. I know it's kind of diversive, but I loved the Incredible Hulk. I was upset when Edward Norton um didn't return, but I like Mark Ruffalo too. He's been awesome as Bruce Banner, but that was a risk, even though that wasn't all on Marvel, because I think Universal Studios is the one who still owns the right to the Incredible Hulk. But whatever. So after that, 2 years later, you get Iron Man 2. All right. It was all right. I wasn't a huge fan of Iron Man 2. But it was decent. Thor, I enjoyed. Captain America, the first Avenger, great. Then we get our first Avengers film. And it makes $1 billion. It's the combination of these characters, and something that comic book fans thought they would never see on the big screen. All these heroes coming together in one movie, amazing. Right after that, we get Iron Man 3. This probably the worst, the worst in those two phases. I did not like Iron Man 3. I was very disappointed with Iron Man 3. Then we get Dark World, the third not the third, but the second Thor film. And it was kind of diversive, you know. Actually, I think that's universally disliked, to be honest with you. I didn't mind it. It wasn't the worst movie I've seen, but it definitely wasn't the best. But we get Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which is probably one of the best. It is up there. It is top three Marvel films. Top three. Awesome movie. Awesome movie. And in that same year, we're going into Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is where I think this is Marvel's biggest risk, because you were kind of teetering with the previous four films after the Avengers films, with the exception of the Winter Soldier. You had this film, everything was riding on this, because you're going in uncharted territory. Because all those previous films, you can, with the exception of Thor, of course, but they were kind of grounded. Iron Man is a grounded character. Hulk is a grounded character. Captain America is a grounded character, and I say grounded meaning that they're based on Earth. They don't go into space. They don't do all that. Thor does. Thor, he's in Asgard and all this. Here, the Avengers film, even though they were fighting aliens, they were still on Earth. And so this is something different, something new, and very scary. I was actually scared how this film was going to turn out. Let's jump into it. Let's start our reviews. First film in this franchise, within a franchise, the 10th film within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU. It is none other than the 2014 superhero comic book film Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. As I said before, James Gunn directed this film. He also co-wrote this film with Nicole Perlman. James Gunn is a filmmaker whose career up to this point I had been following, and I can honestly say that I was excited for him, to be a part of a superhero film. He had directed Sliver, his first film, this little uh, B horror film, if you will, just an homage to it, really. And it was enjoyable, man. It had Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, Michael Rooker, who is in all of his movies, even the Guardians films as Yondu. But I enjoyed that. Super, that starred Rainn Wilson and Kevin Bacon and Elliot Page. It was a Very good. I actually enjoyed that movie. It's funny as I don't know what. I don't know if it was meant to be that funny, but it was really really funny. And now we move on to this, and he wrote a lot of good films as well. He wrote the remake of Dawn of the Dead. He wrote the Scooby Doo films, you know, the live action Scooby Doo movies. Uh, he's a very talented filmmaker, uh, which we see after, especially after these films. I mean, he has done some awesome work, which led him to be the head of DC Studios. But before we get into all that, this was something bigger. And talk about going into a film blind. I'd already stated I knew nothing about this. Nobody I know knew anything about this. Not too many people knew about these characters. Uh, not only the characters, but even the actors involved. This film stars Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, aka Star Lord. And I knew who Chris Pratt was. You know, I've seen him in Park and Rec. I've seen him in other films. He was that he co-starred in. He was had a small role in Wanted. In other films, you probably go back now and recognize like, oh, Chris Pratt was in that, you know. But it was nothing big. He never starred in a film, and to be the star of a Marvel movie, it's like a big leap. And if you've seen him on Park and Recreation, you're like, well, he does not look like a superhero. He's kind of chubby, you know, but he got in the gym and he got in shape for this role. Uh, Zoe Saldana as Gamora. You have Dave Batista. Me being a WWE fan, I know him as a wrestler, and not too many wrestlers uh transition into Hollywood successfully. You know, you have, you know, with exception of Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock, you know, John Cena. Other than that, there aren't too many wrestlers who you can say are awesome actors. You know, who you can look at and say like one day they might be nominated for something. I can honestly say now, now in 2023, Dave Batista can easily be nominated for an Academy Award down the line. I ain't saying for some of the stuff he's done, you know, but he's been great in them. Whatever he's asked to do in films, he does it and he does it well. He takes it seriously. You know what I'm saying? And in this role in particular as Drax, oh man, he stole all these movies. He stole them. He It's almost like he's the star. You know, that's how good he was as this character. You have Vin Diesel providing the voice of Groot, which wasn't. It's probably the easiest paycheck anybody can get. He only says three words. The three words throughout this whole franchise. Well, four. He switches it up every now and then. Is either I am Groot or we are Groot. That's it. Um, and Bradley Cooper, who provides the voice of Rocket the Raccoon. So, as I said before, these characters are so out of left field. Uh, Groot is a tree. Rocket the Raccoon is, you guessed it, a raccoon. So you're gonna have a walking, talking tree and a talking raccoon who shoots blasters. It's like, what am I getting myself into in this film? I remember going to this movie. I was at my family reunion that summer. It was early August of 2014. And that was the particular weekend this movie came out, and I was hell bent on going to see this movie. I was out of town. I want to say I was in Arkansas. I think that was the year we was in Arkansas. And me and my cousin, after the family reunion that evening, we had to find a theater because we was going to see this movie. And we went to go see this movie. It was packed. It was packed. So we sat down, we got our tickets, sat down to watch this movie. And to a man, everybody walked out that theater just mesmerized with this movie. I have never, well, that's a little ambitious. I'm not going to say never, but it's rare that I go to the theater and just feel overwhelming joy from watching a movie. And I mean overwhelming joy to the point where I can honestly say from the opening frame to the end credits, I was so excited, so pleased with everything I got from this movie. Took me off guard. Me and my cousin, we walked out of the theater and immediately we were like, man, this was like Star Wars. This was a Star Wars movie. And I felt like this was before we got the sequel trilogy, the Force Awakens, the Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. So we haven't gotten a Star Wars film in a while up to this point. I'm not counting the prequels. But so this felt like the original trilogy to me. This movie felt Star Warsy. You have the scruffy pilot, the Han Solo of the movie and that Star Lord. You have your Chewbacca with Groot. Groot represents Chewbacca. You have R2D2 who, well, is he R2D2 or is he C3PO? Maybe it's a combination of both with Rocket the Raccoon. You have your Princess Leia with Gamora. You know, now Drax is just Drax. Drax the Destroyer is just Drax. I don't have a I don't have a comparisons to anybody in Star Wars with him, but all the rest, it just felt really Star Warsy to me. It had some elements of Indiana Jones to me. It had elements of oh my god, it was on the tip of my tongue. Now I forgot it. It'll come to me later. But anyways, it was like my whole childhood. It was a lot of homages to the 80s and the 90s. You have a rocking soundtrack of classic rock and pop music from early eras that I remember listening to. And it was just a perfect blend. The music wasn't in there just to be in there. It was there for reasons, to help elevate the movie. And it was so good. Along with our leading cast, in this film, you have Lee Pace as Roland. You have Michael Rucker as Yondu, Catherine Gillian as Nebula, also Jamin Hensu, John C. Riley, Glenn Close, and Benicio del Toro as the Collector. What a film! The premise of the film, in case you haven't seen it, Peter Krill and a group of interterrestrial criminals go on a run after stealing a powerful artifact, which we later learn in the film is one of the Infinity Stones that Thanos is on the hunt for. I am amazed that this movie got made for one and turned out as well as it did. This was arguably, I gave Captain America, the Winter Soldier, a top 3 out of the MCU. One of the other threes is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 as my favorite. I love this movie. I adore this movie immensely. From the opening scene, when we saw Peter Quill as a kid be abducted by Yondu and his crew after his mother died, uh, immediately you knew you was in for something different because you start off with this emotion now, with all these emotions like, wow, this is how we start in the movie. Okay, the main character's mother dies, and we leap forward in time to Peter Quill. He's grown up now. He's on this planet looking for the artifact, and he has a Sony Walkman. for for all you youngsters out there, that was our That was our entertainment. It's a Sony Walkman. He plays the music and he has a dance number as he's walking through this planet to find the artifact. And I'm like, okay, we are definitely going into silly land. I didn't know when I first watched it. I was like, oh, what type of movie are we getting ourselves into here? But it fit. It was so silly, but it wasn't silly to the point like, oh, this is going to be stupid. No, it was really, really fun. And it just lets you know that you're in for a fun time. We started off the opening scene with doom and gloom. And the very next scene is happy go lucky, to let you know that it's going to be a roller coaster ride here, and it was. The action was amazing. The special effects was amazing. I love the villain, Lee Pace as Ronan the Accuser. We got an appearance from Josh Brolin as Thanos, who is the big bad of the first four phases of the MCU. Circling back around to Chris Pratt as Star Lord. Uh, didn't know what to expect from Chris Pratt up to this point, but he held it down. I mean, Chris Pratt, I could see in another universe, in another timeline, Chris Pratt being Indiana Jones. I can see him being Han Solo. I guess he's the another variant of Harrison Ford, if you will. I can see him going back and playing those Harrison Ford roles if we were in a different timeline and a different multiverse or something. He just has that swag. He has that kind of charm that can hold you, gets your attention. He can play silly and comedic, but at the same time give you those heavy scenes, which he does throughout this series, but he does it so well in this film as well. And as far as a MCU film that we have known to grow and love, all the MCU films with the Easter eggs, this is the most Easter egg ridden film in the MCU. If you have a keen eye, you can catch so many Easter eggs in this movie that reference comics, that reference other MCU films, that uh, just in the background, just throw away little gags. You know what I'm saying? It is fun for rewatch purposes because you can go back and watch a certain scene and see if you spot this particular character or this particular thing that was in the comics, and stuff like that. It is a joy to watch, and it has become one of the mainstays in the MCU. When you think Marvel Cinematic Universe, you cannot exclude the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 gets a letter grade of an A. One of my favorite films in the MCU. I absolutely love Volume 1. Now, let's move on to Volume 2, which came out in 2017. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the 15th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is written and directed by James Gunn once again, and the film stars a returning ensemble cast of Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, Michael Rooker, Karen Gillian, and Sylvester Stallone, as well as Kurt Russell as Ego the Living Planet. This go around, the Guardians travel throughout the cosmos as they help Peter Krill learn more about his mysterious parentage. I was so excited for Volume 2. I was so excited for obvious reasons because I was such a big fan of the first film. And I could not wait for Volume 2. Where are we going? What's the next stop for this motley crew of heroes here? And this go around, I was kind of let down. I wasn't mad at it. I didn't hate it, and I didn't think it was bad. It just wasn't as good as the first one. Um, the first film, it was organically funny. You know what I'm saying? It was funny through the chemistry and the writing and the direction. It just felt organic. It just felt like they turned on the camera and let these actors cook. This go around in volume two, they were just trying to be funny. And you could feel it. It felt like they were just trying to crack jokes, trying too hard. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. They tried way too hard to be funny in this movie. Now there were funny parts. Now I'm not poo pooing. The movie is funny in parts, just not like the first one where I felt like they were uh just bouncing off of each other. In this go around, it felt like they say a line, they're waiting for the joke, or waiting for the laughs and stuff like that. With the exception of Dave Batista. This go around, Dave Batista, he was being more funny than in volume one. In volume one, he was unintentionally funny. In volume two, he was just trying to be funny for funny's sake. But he was nailing it though. But it just didn't fit. It felt like it was a big change to his character. Even though I enjoyed his character, he was the funniest part of the movie. But he's Drax the Destroyer. you know, I want you to be more menacing, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. I wanted you to be more brutal, but he was the comic relief. And that I did not think it fit the film. Um Aside from that, everything else was great. I loved Yondu. This was a Yondu film. And as much as I didn't enjoy this movie as much as the first one, I love Yondu's story here. And I love the story of the fatherhood. You know, the father story is so relevant here. And it's weird. It's weird how all this plays out because this actually took place after my father had passed, and they made a father film. And it's like, okay, now we now y'all trying to kick me in the stomach. What y'all trying to do? But it was very emotional with Yandu, um um basically revealing himself to be the father figure of Peter Quill. Uh in this film, we find out that Peter Quill's biological father is Ego, the living planet, who is a celestial, portrayed in this film by the great Kurt Russell. And he was the villain. And the reason that Yandu did not take him to Ego is because Yandu found out that Ego was killing all of his lineage. He was killing his children that he had created all through the galaxy. He's trying to make heir, not so much an heir, but somebody who can be with him to basically take over the universe. And Peter Quill is the only one who possesses that gene that he needs. So he didn't take him to him, and he basically raised him up as his own son. And it was so emotional at the end. Spoilers, of course, that when Yondu died, and that his sacrifice for Peter, it was so beautifully done. This is where James Gunn shines. The way James Gunn can get emotion out of his audience in all of his films is it's a skill. It is a true skill. Not every filmmaker can do this. A lot of filmmakers try, but they don't succeed. He succeeds so well, and the way he can balance the humor and the action and the heavy moments and the most emotional moments throughout a film is a absolute skill that he possesses, and he did it well in this film. Even though I'm not the biggest champion of Volume Two, I still enjoy it for that much. My biggest gripes with it is the story between Peter Krill and Ego. I I did not like that story. It, it just felt like a lot was missing there. You know what I'm saying? It just did not flow. It did not flow. It felt kind of thrown in, if you will. The most interesting storyline throughout this film was Yondu and Rocket, actually. And I could have watched 2 hours of those two going on adventures. That was a very, very interesting and exciting storyline that was going out throughout this film. And it really saved the movie, to be honest with you. Um, but Peter Quill and Ego, it didn't click with me. But everything else in the film, for the most part, I enjoyed. I enjoyed Nebula and Gamora's sister dynamic. How Nebula just wanted a sister, even though Thanos pit them against each other as they grew up, and that was pretty emotional. I like that. I felt that. Uh, Baby Groot, Baby Groot was fun, and the Sovereign was fun. It had some fun elements to it. It just didn't. It just didn't come together uh, as well as the previous film. But overall, I did enjoy it. It is a good addition to the franchise, good addition to the MCU, and I give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a letter grade of a C plus. I think it's a real good film. It is rewatchable, but it's just doesn't have that same magic as the previous film. All right, so our last film, should I count this as a film? It's more of a special. Actually, it is a special. It is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special that was released exclusively on Disney Plus this past November of 2022. It is a cute little special. It has absolutely no bearing on any story throughout the MCU or even the Guardians per se. Well, there is one little nugget. And spoilers, if you haven't watched Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, we find out that Mantis is Peter Quill's sister because Mantis is a child of Ego. And so that makes them half brother and sister. And I thought that was sweet, especially for a holiday special. That was the present that they gave to her. But in this go around, everybody returned for this special. Chris Pratt, Dave Batista, Catherine Gillian, Palm Cal- Kalamentov. Kalamentov. I can never get her name right, but she plays Mantis. Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, Shane Gunn, and yes, Michael Rooker reprising their roles from the previous Guardians films in the MCU. And Kevin Bacon as a fictional version of himself. This was a very, uh, I would say, entertaining holiday special. It's nothing that you would say, oh man, I need to watch this in order to be up to speed on the upcoming volume 3. At least I don't think. Um, it's nothing there other than we find out that Mantis is Peter Quill's sister, but I don't think that plays a big role. Well, I'm saying that I haven't seen volume 3, so who knows? But that's the only big story to come out of the holiday special. Everything else was just fun and cute. We don't have Gamora because we all know that the Gamora in their timeline died. And so the new Gamora from the other timeline doesn't know any of them, and she ran off in Avengers Endgame. So I guess in Volume 3 they're going to find her. I'm assuming. I don't know. Hopefully I'll find out in the next few hours. But in any event, I already reviewed the holiday special back in November when it came out. So if you want to hear my full review of the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, just go back and listen to that review. But those are the Guardians of the Galaxy films and specials and preparation of the newly released Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Uh, I watched all of these, you know, on rewatch so I can review them for the show and to kind of get hyped up for Volume 3. And that's why I came to that conclusion, as I stated early on in this review, how I wasn't super excited. Because normally that would get me super excited for the next chapter in a story, but it didn't do it. And, I stayed pretty even kill. You know, it's hard to explain. It really it's hard to explain because, yes, I am excited, but I'm not like, you know, breaking down the walls of the theater to go see it. Ah, I'm just been burnt. I'm that jilted lover. I've been hurt too many times by Marvel in the past couple of years, and I refuse to set myself up for disaster. And I was really hurt. I was really, really hurt by Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I hid it. I hid it. I tucked it inside. I tried not to show it, but now I can say I was really hurt by that movie. I thought it was going to be so much better, and it wasn't. It was not good at all. When I sat back, and I would prefer to watch the first two Ant-Man films rather than that. That tells you all you need to know. But here's to wishing and praying that I'm proven wrong. I want to be wrong. I hope I go to see this and I am blown away. I am just eating crow all the way home. Oh, how excellent of a film this is. And I have a deep feeling that I'm gonna be crying at the end of this movie. I have a feeling that a lot of people are gonna be crying at the end of this movie because there's been rumored that we're gonna see some deaths of these characters, of these main characters. It could be one, could be two, could be all. We don't know. It's looking kind of bleak. It going by those trailers. It looks like somebody's not gonna make it out of here alive, and I don't know. I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for that. So we shall see. But are you excited for the new Guardians of the Galaxy film? Uh, how do you feel about the previous Guardians of the Galaxy films? Look, I love this franchise. I love these movies. Even if I wasn't over the moon with Volume 2, I still love it. I still love it. I love these characters. I'm invested in these characters. They are so fun. The actors doing they are these characters. They really dove in and made these characters their own. James Gunn is one of my favorite filmmakers in Hollywood. So uh I enjoy all of his work. I enjoy all of these actors, everything they do. Every single one. This is so well cast. So it's going to be heartbreaking to see it end. And oh boy. Yeah. I guess maybe that's another reason. Maybe that's it. Maybe I cracked it. I don't want to see it end. Maybe that's why I'm not super excited for it. Yeah. Well, it is what it is. We will see. But I want to know how you feel. You can email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or whatever platform you're currently listening to movie goodness, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. And if you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and give this a like. I greatly appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for joining me for our Guardians of the Galaxy special review edition. I guess that's the name. I don't know. I haven't figured out the title for this episode yet. But it is the Guardians of the Galaxy edition of Movie Goodness. Thank you for joining me. Can't wait to speak to you again, and look for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie review, which will be dropping this weekend. Can't wait to speak to you then. Until then, I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.